Today's guest on The Natural You is Dr. Tom Garcia. He is a shaman and wisdom keeper living in the mountains of Durango, Colorado. He bridges ancient shamanic practices with universal laws and spiritual truths and addresses the need for deep healing, so crucial in our culture today. After 30 years in chiropractic and the healing arts, Tom understands that the mind creates the conditions expressed in the body and in life, and the need to heal the mind. Tom has the ability to create safe, sacred spaces that allow people to reclaim their true voice and with it the memory of who they are and why they are here. Hey everyone, welcome to The Natural You. I'm Tim Wood, your host today, and I'm here with Tom Garcia, who has an amazing story. And Tom, welcome to The Natural You, and please tell us your story. I'm just dying to share it with everyone.
Thank you, Tim. I'm so excited to be here with you. So I'm gonna start off and just do a shameless plug for a book that I'm co-author of. It's called The Difference: Essays on Lost Courage and Personal Transformation. And my story's in the personal transformation segment of the book. And so I'll tell a little story, and that's probably the best way to introduce myself. And
Absolutely.
So just the listeners know, like, who is this guy? So I was a chiropractor for 30 years, and I retired from my practice to do what I do now, which is I'm a shaman, and that's how I operate in my life. But that didn't occur overnight. And the story that I tell, and I tell this story in the book, was a really dear friend of mine. My wife and I took care of him in the last 18 months of his life, and he lived here in our home, and our kids were part of it. They were all much younger then. We have 4 children, and his passing, tending to him to the end, and seeing him off at the precipice, something completely unexpected happened for me, and it just broke me open in a way I could have never predicted. And I started going to the woods in the morning before sunrise and in the evening at sunset, and I'd often stay out all night. And I connected with fire and the earth, and a ceremony came to me and a voice came to me. The ceremony came through me, and I just stayed with it, listening for that voice and practicing or just doing the ceremony every time I went out. And what it evolved into, this is over 15 years now, is a practice where now I have people who come to see me from all over the world and stay with me for 5 to 7 days. And we work together intimately, closely on the ground at the fire. We do ceremony. And when I say do ceremony, it's working within a ceremonial space, which is distinct from ordinary time and space, just, everyday life. And inside of that space, it's an opportunity to let down and just be present. I say drop the sword and lay down the shield, like that, and just come undefended, unguarded, to look at your life and look at what's being called through you, what you're being called to. And it's often people who are looking for deeper meaning, deeper purpose, and are reaching for something, and they're not even quite sure what they're reaching for. They just know there's something. And that's where I come in. That's where I help them. And it's beautiful. It's wonderful work, and I love it. And I watch people transform their lives. They do the work. I hold the space, which is really powerful.
Yeah, you're just facilitating. It sounds like, much like in chiropractic, they're doing the healing. We're just facilitating that.
Exactly. Right. And it's that mindset, and it's a heart set and a spirit set that creates a space for maximal healing to occur at any point in time. So that's a little bit about who I am and just my work.
Well,
today.
thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I know I've had profound experiences in the woods, and that's my surname. So I feel there's something in that too. There's something that we get when we're out in nature, and just raw and pure space. And I'm particularly interested in your fire ceremony and the fire circle you mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit more about what fire represents and how you use that within your work and facilitating?
Yeah. So much of what I do today just occurred organically. Like it came to me piecemeal. It started, I would go to the woods and I'd lay out just a crude altar, I'd some sacred objects on a blanket and I'd wait for the sun to rise. And then I got the bright idea to make a fire because it was cold out. And that fire, it morphed into a fire circle with a fire pit in the middle. And, fire, of course, people have been gathering around fire for thousands of years as a source of warmth and protection and communing, creating community around the fire,
Mm.
storytelling, and communing with the divine. And sure enough, that's how fire occurs today for me. It's those things, less about protection and, warmth, but although warmth is a kind of a practical matter when it's cold out, but certainly for creating community and communing with the divine as a practical matter. It's not, I say there's no religion at the fire. It's just a practical matter of connecting deeply, elementally on the earth, under the open sky, with the fire, which is a dynamic, uh, transformative, transmuting element. We take trees which have absorbed sunlight, we put them in the fire, and the sunlight is released. It's like magic, in a manner of speaking. And so
Yeah.
when we bring people out on the land, I know you experience this in your work also. When you take chiropractors out into the wilderness, most of our work is done because nature has an effect that's powerful and undeniable. So when we talk about going back out in nature, in our culture today, not what they call it earthing or forest bathing, and it's like, when kids go out to play barefoot, they're just going out to play.
Yeah.
They're not earthing or forest bathing. And so it's just like that for us. When I go out, like I was out last night with a client, I go barefoot
Mm.
around the fire. I go barefoot in the woods, and I'm a tenderfoot. I still wear shoes, but the simple matter of being on the earth, connected to the earth like that, is really, really beneficial and really powerful
Yeah.
as a recharge, as a reset for our physiology.
Absolutely. The previous guest on was a friend of mine, Lawrence, and he's got a program called Inner Runner, and he was talking about that exact same thing. How you got more proprioceptors in your feet than you have in your fingertips. So he said, just think about that for a while. I was like, okay, that's actually
Yeah.
really cool. Um, yeah, so I think that's so important, and we I like the term nature immersion. I'm not sure. I think it was Bill
Mm.
Plotkin who used that, and
Yeah. Bill
yeah, and
Plotkin's work. Mhm.
he's just down the corner from you. I see. If
Oh, he's right
yeah,
here. Yeah.
well,
The guy I was working with last night was in a year-long program with Bill Plotkin.
well, this is so cool because I was introduced to his books and loved them,
Yeah.
and that was actually the inspiration for the Cairo Wild program that Glenn Duffy and I ran, and and then Arno Brunier, who introduced us, is out there, and
Yeah.
then I saw that you were there. I was like, "Whoa, this is some place we're going to have to go to because it draws in some amazing people. It must have an amazing energy in its own right."
It does. I'll tell you a quick story about that. When I take people out to my fire, uh, I tell the story that we are in a massive valley of ancient tribal energy here that's about 100 miles long east to west and about 30 miles wide north to south. And there are ancient ruins. We have Chimney Rock and Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde, and then there's mountain ruins and sacred land to the north. And we are somewhere smack dab in the middle of it, the community that I live in and also my fire. And there is a palpable energy on the land where I work that's um, it's potent. It's like that place itself is a sacred spot on the land,
Mm,
but not just because of me and also because of what I bring, but because of each of us,
mm,
who we are, what we bring, makes the land sacred right where we stand
mm,
because
mm,
of what's within
mm.
us, and helping people just to embrace that simple truth about who we are. So that's where we live
And
here,
that's in Colorado. That's
southwestern part of the state.
mm,
Yeah. But I also want to add It's wherever you are.
Yeah.
Every place is sacred. If we make it so, we give it all the meaning that it has for us, and that sanctifies the
So,
place.
so is it our state? Is it what we bring? Is it the things that we do to make something sacred, or is it just sacred by being on the earth, or you know, I looked in some of your work and you mentioned sacred ceremony. So, what makes
Mhm.
a ground sacred, or what makes a ceremony sacred?
Well, it's really all of the above. It's intention, of course, intention, the intention that I bring to what I do, and it has occurred over time. As these pieces were coming to me over time, all I knew was it felt right to burn sage and to offer tobacco and to have sweetgrass. And then as more elements came into the ceremony, the words that I use when I open the circle and the prayer that I offer when I offer a prayer, there is not a word that is wasted, and every part of what I do has meaning and significance. And if I were to be asked, I could talk about that in more detail, which is to say that that everything is sacred, and we bring all the meaning that it has for us. We give it meaning, and if it doesn't mean anything, if it seems just to be a rote practice, a automatic kind of ritual, and it becomes meaningless, it's because we fail
Mm.
to bring meaning to it. Just like to a relationship, any relationship with another person, our relationship to the earth, our relationship to
Mm.
the way we live.
So it's we bring the meaning and the sacredness to anything. It's like you
Right.
say, a relationship.
And if it's missing, it's because I failed to bring it. I didn't bring it. And I noticed that in my work with people, if there's something missing, if it feels like there's something missing, I look inside to see what am I failing to bring that's that's not present. And usually it's myself, bringing myself more fully present,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Um,
Wow. And if
yeah,
when we take our relationships for granted, or we take where we live for granted, or all our blessings, um, that's the same thing, right? Where's that coming from? It's us. So I think that's
yeah,
such a huge insight for us. So thank you.
yeah.
That's another pearl there right, right away. So thank you.
Take it.
Brilliant. Um, so the ceremonies that and the things that have come to you, are they how would you describe them? Because you said the first thing it came to you, was a voice
Yeah.
came to you, and that's not your
Mhm.
imagination. That's a specific. Is that quite detailed, or is that just an idea that you then feel you need to follow and kind of flesh out?
Well, that's a great question, and this is the thrust of my message, the thrust of my work. Whatever else it includes, the heart of it is to deepen and strengthen your connection with Source, God, Creator, Spirit, by whatever name that we give the intelligence that created us. It is incumbent upon us. It is an absolute requirement that we deepen and strengthen that connection. It's when I say that, it's like obvious, but at the same time, the way we live, we often step over it or step around it or fail to appreciate the significance of that. And that's what sources everything in our lives. And so I say that to say then the the voice was a function of getting really quiet and listening for what guides my life, listening for my inner guidance. Now for me it's a voice that speaks through my journal
Okay.
primarily when I write. But it's also a feeling, it's a sense, it's an intuition. Our sixth sense is our intuitive sense, but there's a seventh sense, and that's our ability to listen for the divine,
Okay.
that intelligence. And so that capacity, that's what I stress most often with people is listen for that inner guidance, and then you'll know what to do. You'll know what to say. You'll know where to go. So that's like a guiding principle right there. And then everything else issues forth from that. That's at the center of everything.
And that inner guidance, is that kind of like heart wisdom? Is that was that something different? Because people often say, I'm
I
guided
think
by my
heart
heart.
wisdom's a good way to, yeah, guided by your heart. Um, that's a beautiful way to put it. Heart wisdom. It is wisdom. It's an internal wisdom. And here's what I've learned in my own practice with fire ceremony is whether I'm alone or with someone, I do the same ceremony.
Mm.
It's not by rote. It's a ritual, but every time I do it, it brings tears to my eyes because I'm connecting. It's a moment of connection. And then in the process of listening, I'm truly listening for wisdom. This is what I've learned. There is a wisdom that's available to us, that's always available when we listen for it. And then we can find evidence or validation or confirmation in spiritual books and other kinds of material that confirms what we've heard in our quiet time. I like to call it quiet time. Whether you're at the fire or sitting in your meditation room or a corner in your house, it's all the same.
And the firework, sitting around the fire, or, on your own, which I love to do. And I take myself off once or twice a year and just spend 3 days on my own, usually fasting. Usually somewhere in Wales and away from everyone else, um, and that time on your own, just being. I think so few of us actually have that. I mean, even if we took away the smartphones and the devices, and even just could you go away and sit by yourself for a day?
That's a challenge.
Could you face
Yeah,
that?
that's
And I don't think a lot of people can do that. And I'd say to anyone listening, if that really sounds like something hard, then I'd encourage you to lean into that and say, okay, well, I want to go and sit. I can take food. I can take water. I don't have to take food. I don't have to take water because you'll be fine. And go and sit on your own where no one is for a whole day. And even if it's just during daylight hours, great if you can go into the dark and have a fire and in a camp. But even just go for 12 hours, sunrise to sunset, and just sit on your own.
Yeah, beautiful. And so that's the essence of a ceremony. What do you do? What do you take with you? Maybe a notebook, a crystal, or a crucifix, or a set of beads, or any number of things to begin to create a focal point. And then you go out on it, sit on a blanket, sit in the shade, and then it's just you. But you're not alone. It's you and the creator, you and that which created you, and to listen for that and just be in the presence, to invite the presence into your awareness and invite your awareness into the presence and sit or be or walk. There's all different kinds of ways to meditate and be present like that.
Yeah. I think but those kind of the doing things, I find we can get distracted in the task. And that's nice, and that's a meditation in itself, isn't it? And the preparation, but I personally have found like once I've got all that stuff ready and I've got my camp set, and it's like, okay, now if that's done, okay, now you can just sit, and now.
Yeah. The aspect of the practice of journaling, I call it sacred journaling, developing that capacity and the habit of journaling is really powerful because that connects us. That's one direct way of connecting with our own internal voice. And it becomes less a matter of reporting what happened over the course of a day than it is musing, listening, stream of consciousness, connecting with your own internal voice like that can lead to an expanded sense of an internal voice.
Well, that's something I've never. I mean, I jot down things, but I've never done a journaling practice. So, how would you guide me and anyone else listening? You obviously said how important it is. How would you guide us as rank beginners in a journaling practice? Is it a daily thing? is it best in a leather-bound book, or do we need a certain time and space? If you can just guide me,
Yeah,
please.
great questions. Sir, time and space is really important. Having a quiet period of time, whether you're giving yourself 15 minutes, a half an hour, or more, to create that space for yourself. And um, I think in terms of altars, also altars being an arrangement of beautiful objects, sacred objects, things that have meaning as a focal point. And so I like to have in my space an altar and a place to sit if I'm indoors. And outside, I create an altar and a place to sit. And it can be really simple. A log with a couple items on it, you're in your camp chair. A leather-bound book is really nice, to have a designated place where you're going to have this conversation or record your thoughts. And it's helpful too to have simple questions. I have 3 powerful questions that they're big questions, and they came to me at the fire. And I ask them frequently of the people that come to see me. And I will say, here are the 3 questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And who sent me? When you know who sent you, then you can better discern why you're here and who you are in the matter of your own life. Now those are big questions.
Huge, yeah.
And you,
the biggest.
they are the biggest questions. And so you can ask, I think it's really important to frame your own question. Sometimes I'll sit with my journal and I'll write, what do you have for me today? And then I see what comes through and I just start writing. It's like giving yourself permission to just write without editing, without too much forethought, without overthinking it. Who am I? Who am I? As a project, a project kind of question. Who am I? And then write down who you say you are. Why am I here? Well, let me think. You get through all the superficial things, you start getting down to the deeper bedrock of, I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to change people's lives. I'm here to make a contribution to humanity, to my community, to, fill in the blank.
Yeah. And sometimes do you sometimes sort of get stuck and say, oh, those questions are just too big. Do you have a slimmed down version? You go, okay, I'm just going to start writing about what happened yesterday or how I felt about this incident,
Yes.
or are there other little techniques that you can?
That just like that. Pay attention too when ideas drop in. I have multiple notebooks. I have a main journal that I, journal in, but I have a little moleskin notebook that I carry with me when ideas drop in. I jot them down real quick so I don't lose them. Then I have other notebooks where, I just call it notes to myself and I write down ideas. But I think it's important to be in the practice of capturing ideas, capturing thoughts as they drop in. And so if you sit down in your chair and it's like really nothing's coming in, but you get a couple ideas, jot them down. And maybe that's it for the day. 2 minutes of journaling. Okay, I'm done. But now you're developing a practice. The next time it's maybe 5 or 10 minutes and like more starts to come in. So it's
okay. So you don't have a set time, like I have to do 15 minutes a day, or I have to do.
No. And sometimes I don't journal at all.
Make it flexible.
I sit down, I do my spiritual study. I'm a student of A Course in Miracles. So that gives me a focal point as a spiritual study. And often when I'm just reading those words and the wisdom and the pearls of wisdom that come out of that, thoughts will start to drop in, and then I grab my journal and write things down. And if I only have a half a page,
it's like a catalyst, sort of catalyst, right, for
so finding
something.
Ways to stimulate your own, that creative connection like that. That is the source of our creativity, that connection.
Excellent. No, I think I have resisted that for a long time, and I've been recommended it a few times, and I hear people talk about journaling a lot and how helpful it is. So maybe it's time for me to actually and make it part of
Yes.
my practice. I do sit every morning, or most mornings. And I like to do that outside and have a cup of
Yeah.
coffee. But maybe this could be a really more productive practice.
And keep it simple, like no pressure, without
Mm,
strain. Just let it flow. And
good.
I mean, you're a creative man, you're a creative human being. And as ideas drop in, just jot them, get them down. And that can be
Mm,
the seed, the crystal for more ideas,
yeah,
fleshing out concepts.
brilliant, brilliant. Well, I think that's next on my list. So next time someone sees me and say, Tim, how's that journaling coming on? And then I'll have to give you an honest answer.
Well, there's different methods around that too. Some people do 3 pages of just uh, more. They call them morning pages. Just three pages of a brain dump. Um, that works too. I don't do that, but it works for people.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I think it was that The Artist's Way. I think was a book
Artist way.
that
Yeah.
recommended. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
I've heard people talk about it
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the thrusts of it is
Yes.
doing that.
Well, here's something else.
Um,
Gratitudes. What am I grateful for? Oh my, just drop into that place of gratitude in your
mm,
heart and in
mm.
your being, and oh, there's so much to be grateful for. What blessings do I have today? What do you see? We often ask, uh, what am I to do? What's my purpose? Like, what's my purpose? I'm thinking, what's my purpose? You could ask it differently to say, what is your purpose for me? Now, who are you talking
Ah,
to? You know,
yeah,
your higher self, or that which created you.
yourself. Yeah.
What's your purpose for me? What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? And
Wow. So
then and then
that's
hope.
almost that's more like a prayer, isn't it? It's
Yes. Yes.
that sounds more prayer like to me.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Interesting. Asking the higher self. Um, and the how your the practices going back to your sort of ceremonies, the practices you use, how and I'm assuming now that these might be have practices that have been used for centuries by native people, and that you may have adopted some of those, or some of those may have come to you. How do you find sort of people in our modern world um, take to those? Because there's this kind of um, esoteric side of the practical things we have and the more intuitive sides. How do we kind of, when people are coming in from a very kind of technological modern society with certain values and norms, and we put them into this a little bit different environment, um, how do you
Yeah.
navigate that?
That's a great question. So I'm Native American by birth, but I didn't really connect with my Native American self till I was about 50, and and it was and it came from going out into the woods, going to the fire, and it's like something started to come through me that was very primal, very native. And
Mm,
interestingly, there's a huge native presence where we live here in Southwest Colorado, and I believe that the energy of the place combined with my own energy naturally led to practices and elements of the ceremony that look very Native American because it's part of the environment. So I start, I
yeah,
have
yeah.
feather fans, and I use sage, sweetgrass, tobacco, and cedar. I have other herbs that, I make these herbal blends. They're not complicated. Sage, sweetgrass, tobacco, cedar, rose petals, lavender, and pine. I just, make a blend of dried herbs, and I use that.
They're all, they're all
They're all
there.
here, right? It's part of the
Mm,
environment.
mm,
So there's that piece of connecting wherever you are with what's natural in your environment. And like I said,
mm,
I do believe that these elemental aspects of a ceremony are everywhere. They're available to us all. They're not only indigenous. They're not only from a particular tribal practice. They're available in the
mm.
field, in the field that we
Yeah,
live in.
and and wherever you
wherever
are.
you are.
So I'm, I was born and raised in South Africa, and so different environment,
Yeah.
different things. But native people there would use those things in a similar
Right.
way. You've got different plants with different medicinal properties, um, and when we plan our events, the Kara Wild events, we always say, the land will tell us what to
Yeah.
do. It will shape that, and so when we're going in and we'll go, okay, well, we've got some ideas of what to do. And they'll go, oh, this would be a great space for that. Or hang on, this space is for
Yeah.
this, and so I think the environment, the landscape, the topography is all going to feed into those
Yeah. So
elements.
it's very natural. It's organic. It's elemental. It's just what's so. And here's something else. We're all indigenous to a place. You have Celtic
Mm,
roots there in Europe, in the UK. Like there's a whole energetic field there that's unique to that place, just like there is here. And so
yeah,
we each tap
yeah,
into whatever the field is where we are and what the field makes available to
mm,
us. And as we, now, this has been my experience, as I listen, as I you know ground myself, it becomes more clear the kind of space I want to create. That I use a circle, that I use rocks that are you know common to the area. I don't go and buy rocks and
mm,
bring them
mm,
in. I use rocks that are common to the area. I find the feathers of birds that live here, like that.
yeah.
Antlers, deer antlers, and yeah, it's just and it's beautiful because it's so organic and it's so from here, from inside.
And question that I sometimes have, or conflict, is I have a European origin. My ancestors are from England, and but my family had been in Africa for 200 years,
Yeah,
and before I came back to the UK, and so I sometimes have this conflict of like, well, I'm from that land, but my genes are from
yeah,
this land, and so which of those traditions are things that I should go towards? Am I gravitating because I'm in this space, or if I'd stayed in South Africa, would I gravitate to those? And is it appropriate for me, a white dude, to be kind of having involving with traditions of native people there? Is that cultural appropriation? Is that how do you see that as a as a Native American, and obviously having European people with you and coming in your
mhm.
ceremonies, and how could you give me some insights into how I can bridge that gap a bit better for
Yeah.
myself?
First, I would say you have to feel into it. Feel into what feels right, and eventually, at some point, you're going to be borrowing something from somewhere that someone would say, "Well, that's indigenous to my people, and you shouldn't do that." And of course, we wouldn't want to do anything that would be disrespectful or dishonoring of another culture. And here where I live, there's strong native presence, and that might take exception to that. Here I am doing a ceremony, but here's how I clarify that for myself. And it's not a justification, it's more of a stand that my ceremony is self generated. I didn't go and borrow it en masse from another culture and say, well, I'm going to do like these these people
Mm,
do. It's self-generated, and I own that, and I stand strongly in that without any without being defensive or any way assertive about it. It's just this is self-generated, and so you can do that as well. Anyone can do that. They begin to draw upon the elements of their environment, and if it feels right, they make it their own and create their own ritual, their own ceremony. And I think that's really important that we return to the ceremony that lives in our heart, however it's expressed, however simple it might be. Let it be yours
mm,
as a way to ground, come to
yeah,
earth.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
like it. I think that's ceremony for self, and as you say, it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can
No, it
be it
doesn't.
can be very 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 simple.
Make a circle and put a fire in it.
So
I'll often say that to people.
Yeah.
You don't know what to do. You feel lost. You have questions that don't have answers. Make a circle and put a fire in it. Whether you light a candle and you're in the circle of light that a candle casts, or you go outside and you
Mm, mm,
delineate a
mm.
circle in your space, however big or small, and make a small fire in a can or a brazier or whatever like that, make a circle and put a fire in
Mm.
it. And that's the beginnings of your ceremony. I have people from other parts of the
Yeah.
world who send me photos of their fire pits on the beach in
Mm.
Australia, in their backyard in Ireland, in the UK, in their garden, making a fire. And it just warms my heart
Mm.
that they
Mm.
took the teaching back to where they lived. I
Yeah.
have someone
Yeah.
who came and said, all I knew was I had to be here. Here, I felt called. And I said, do you know why? Because what's here is not there where you were until you take it there. You have to take it.
Ah,
Take what you
that
find here, take any part of this ceremony that you see, and take it home with you and create your own ceremony. Make a circle and put a fire in it.
that's so generous and so empowering
Mhm.
for people is to say like I don't own this.
Yeah,
This is something that has come to me. You know, the fact that it came to me means that it wasn't from me in the
right.
first
It comes
place.
through.
Um, it came through
Through.
you,
Mm.
and as you say, those universal things. I can't remember the quote exactly, but it's about by used in the San Bushmen, which are probably one of the oldest peoples in the world. And the saying goes something like, "We will gather around the fire because it will make us whole again." Um,
I love
and
that.
boof, yeah.
That's beautiful.
So they've been doing it longer than probably
Yeah.
anyone. So if they have rights to it, then
Yes.
none of us do. But I think, as you say, every culture, every tradition, whether you're in Papua New Guinea or in the Amazon rainforest or in the Kalahari
Mhm.
Desert, people are using fire not just for food and protection, but for community and
Yeah.
communing and with each other and with
Yes.
Source.
So I call my work reclaim the sacred. And it can sound
Mm,
even to my own ears a bit grandiose, like, well, what does that mean? You know? And yet that's what I'm called to call what I do, reclaim the sacred. And everywhere I turn in my work with people and in my own ceremonial space, it's truly that reclaiming, taking back what's sacred, calling it instead of
mm,
waiting for someone else to tell me what's sacred. Often we turn that over to the church or the clergy, to do
mm,
ceremony, to offer a blessing, you need to be ordained in some particular manner to um, officiate at a birth or a wedding or a death. And yet it's it's integral to who we are that we have the capacity for that and to reclaim that capacity to simply
mm,
bless, as an example, to bless myself and to bless my
mm.
world. You know, who's going to do
Yeah,
that for me if I don't do that for myself and my family and the environment in which I
yeah.
live?
Yeah, and creating those ceremonies for your
Yes,
family. We had I created naming ceremonies for our kids. I'd never been to a naming ceremony. I'd been to christenings and baptisms,
beautiful.
and uh, and I just read a little bit around a few little things, and I thought, okay, well, this is what I
Mhm,
believe to be
mhm.
true, and we just had a few friends round, and we've got a couple of people to read different verses and different lines from things, and I said a little speech, and that was it,
Yeah,
on a nice summer's day. So you can do those things, and we have that agency
yeah,
to take that
yes,
back, and it doesn't have to be by an ordained
right.
person. And I think that's
Yeah,
wonderful for everyone to go, I can have access to this. And if you don't feel confident, maybe ask one of your friends or someone that you think might have some of that for you, because some people are talented in
yeah,
that way, and they're well to have a magnificent naming ceremony or whatever kind of ceremony for you, and you can talk to them and maybe get some ideas, and they can maybe officiate for you, so you can be more participant than
yeah, and it's a
delivering it.
co-creation. You've invited them to to facilitate it, and you have some ideas about how you want it to go, and you talk about it, and then it becomes a co-created event where you had a contribution to the ceremony, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Co-creation. I
yeah,
love that. Brilliant. No, there's so many good things, and I'm just really inspired by your um, work that you're doing, and that kind of pivotal point of leaving practice and the passing of your friend and how that catalyzed things for you. Um, how did you kind of step out? I mean, you're in chiropractor for 30 years, and then that transition, because that's often the tough part, right? You knew you needed to do something
yeah,
different. Um, and stepping out of that must have been a huge step in trust. I've got to trust my intuition. It's all right to say that, but when you have to give up your job
yeah.
and start something
Yes,
new, that's a whole nother level. Could you kind of speak to that and talk us through the kind of process you went through, or some of the emotions, because people are often scared of
yeah,
change, and particularly when it's like something as big as your work and your income stream and all that kind
right.
of stuff. Um, so if you could help us with that, there'll be your struggles and insights would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
I had a great practice in a small town, and enjoyed it. Yet at the same time, I could feel something pulling. About 15 years in, and that's about the time that my friend Jim came to live with us, and this whole other shift started happening. And there's there's something to be said for. It sounds almost cliche, but following the call of your heart. And there was a calling. It was kind of faint and distant, yet I could sense it, and I kept listening for it more and more, and until it became so strong. And now I'll tell you, there was a time in my practice I felt almost agitated because I knew I needed to be. I could feel myself being called to move on, yet at the same time I was afraid to
Mm,
let go and move on to what? It was like a big unknown, and so it was a process of really, again, trusting that internal guidance, that prompt, surrendering to it, being grateful for what I have and what was moving through me, grieving loss. It was all part of the process, and continuing to go to the land and open ceremony for myself and simply listen and ask for guidance, ask for help. I ask for help all the time. I'm like, help me through this, whatever it is I'm going through, and to trust that
mm.
help is on the way. And so, it's a deeply spiritual process without question. And
I can
yeah, and
hear
it's
that.
it's
Yeah.
it's also a matter of being willing to disconnect from the superficial noise and distraction of everyday life, to go to those quieter places within myself to listen for that call. And I liken it to kind of a trajectory of my life path and the creative life force when they meet, and that takes me in another direction. And we run the risk often of missing those moments of intersection and getting far down
Mm,
the road and realizing it could happen. And it happens for people. There was a turn a long time back, many years ago, that I didn't take, and then the next one and the next one.
mm.
And so, paying attention
Yeah.
to when those intersecting moments, those crucible moments occur, and what are we being called to next? It could be the loss of a loved one, um, a serious change in the environment. It could be something like COVID shaking up the whole
Mm.
planet, that it
Yeah.
calls
Yeah.
us to a whole nother expression of our life force in the world, and
Yeah.
that's what it
Those
was.
those those pivotal. And you must have had the support of your wife and
I
family.
did.
I mean, how did they? If you could, obviously you're not in isolation. It's not just Tom on his own going off and
Right.
doing his doing his ceremonies. How do they support you, or were there any conflicts along the way?
Well, my wife is incredibly supportive. Her love and support and her trust in me is just off the charts. And even when I wasn't sure and I didn't know, she trusted that I would find my way also. And of course the kids just come right along. I'm dad, and so that was really huge. And I live in a community that's supportive, friends and neighbors that recognize, they observe my own transition, my own transformation, and would often reflect back to me who they saw, what they saw, and that gave me the impetus to keep moving. But having a supportive environment, supportive people around you is really important. A network of support like that. We can't do this alone.
Yeah.
And especially those of us who, whether we call ourselves light workers, healers, change makers, influencers, like, the words that describe we are part of a movement of change in the world. We need all the help we can get, and we need to support one another, recognizing ourselves as brothers and sisters on a path, on a mission that's to a common goal, if you will, a common expression.
Yeah. Tom, it's such lovely insights and a lot of wisdom coming through. So we're running towards a close now, and it seems to have whizzed by.
Yeah.
And I've just loved having you on and connecting with you. I'm going to put all your details in the show notes, and I'll summarize a little bit later. But I'm just so grateful for you taking the time out, and I know we're in different time zones, so I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing, and for the role model that you are for so many, and the facilitating you do. And I know you're touching so many lives. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for inviting me on the show and just reaching out, and for us to have this connection that we've co-created here, and wherever it might lead. I'm always curious.
I'm actually excited by that. So you could probably see it in my face. So it'd be great. Tom, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Phew. I love that episode. Probably because so much of Tom's work resonates with the ethos and events on our Kyra Wild program. Please check out his website and YouTube video in the show notes to learn more about Fire Ceremony. I've also included a link to the book he co-authored, The Difference, Essays on Loss, Courage and Personal Transformation. I'll leave you with this question. Could you create a sacred ceremony for yourself or a loved one? If you need help with this, send me an email. Till next time, keep nurturing that sacred fire within.